by starting, I would of course like to showcase two things that aren't very nutritional, but that are super pretty. And they have been printed in the wonderful machine operated by Per over there from Cocus. Whoa. And it's actually a food printer that can print anything on anything. It can even print on beer foam, I have been informed. I haven't tried that yet. But of course, here it's printed on a taco and on a piece of white bread, which makes excellent printing material. So go over there and you can get the printout of basically anything. I think he has a million or so pictures. Oh, there's another one. What's? Oh yeah, look at that one. Yep. Yeah, you can get your own. You can probably get your own picture there as well. So, but please take your seats. Let's go into the next phase here, talking about nutrition. And please welcome up on stage Professor Robert Brummer from Örebro University. A big round of applause for Robert. Now, Robert, you're here to talk about responsive nutrition. And you come from Örebro, and no, you come from the Netherlands, right? But you're a professor at the University of Örebro, and
right.
you're probably our leading expert on nutrition as well in Sweden here. So, responsive nutrition. We're going to get into that in a second through a video. But who are you, and what do you do in Örebro?
Yeah. I'm a professor of gastroenterology and nutrition at Örebro University, and I'm there also leading the whole food and health program of the university. So we are quite unique that we have actually identified two profiles at the university where we want to profile ourselves nationally, internationally. One is AI and robotics, and the other one is food and health. So I'm leading that as a pro-vice chancellor as well.
And AI and robotics, that's and food.
Also,
those
it has
things,
a lot of
they have a lot of connections, right?
Yeah.
And nutrition is of course a specialty here. And then you know, what is responsive nutrition? You brought a video or something.
Yeah,
like that,
I have just some slides, but I can. If you just can start the first slide,
shall we see
I
here?
can tell you a little bit about what I see as responsive. Yeah, that's right.
That's the one. Okay, I'll take the clicker.
So if you look at this slide and think what actually happens, and also what I can do as a doctor, this is what you see on the x-axis is your age, and on the y-axis is actually the sort of the severity of a disorder. That could be insulin sensibility, that could be some changes in your vessels, that could be aging things or so on. And you see that they will deteriorate by time. That's normal.
Yep.
But that happens during your entire life, and then at a certain level you get symptoms, and that's what you see here at the blue line. When it crosses the dotted line, you get symptoms, but you don't do anything, you just go on with that, and then at a certain moment you actually get sick. You get a heart attack or a stroke or diabetes or whatever. And then at the time you have a diagnosis, you're at a doctor, you're a patient. And so what can I do as a doctor? That's
exactly.
there, you are there. So as a doctor, I have to do something very strong, and that are pharma, drugs. And what I can do is, you can see here, you have a little bit of an increase in life course, but that's what I can do. And then keep in mind that most of the drugs we give to patients, only 40% of the patients have a positive effect on that. So but it is so strong effect that you can measure it. However, if we do something with food, that could act on the entire life. And you see that this angle is much smaller than the angle with a drug, but the effect is much larger. Well, this sounds very simple.
Yeah.
So we have to do it with nutrition during our entire life. But the issue is actually that you see there are two arrows there. What we aim at is a lot of that we want to prevent diabetes, we want to prevent cancer or something like that. That's what you see in the horizontal bar. You get sort of a delay of something is happening. I think that we have to look much more also at the vertical bar there, which shows actually the actual improvement today, which is not in measures of illness, but in measures of wellness. How do my cognition today, my sleep quality, how I can concentrate myself, how I feel, my mood, that sort of things. That is actually what you also create by nutrition before you get symptoms.
So I live longer and I live better.
And I think that if we we look more on that, we get the effect on the prevention just for free. But this is not the whole story. Because if we enlarge that part and we take a period of, let's say, some months, 3 months or 4 months, you see again the blue line, and then we take two persons, one the red one and the other is the green one, and we take a marker of health there. But that marker of health is not, of course, always steady. That goes up and down, like your sugar or whatever, your blood pressure. If we look at the red one, that goes up and down all the time. If we do an intervention trial for, let's say, 12 weeks, which is only a little bit there, if you are unlucky, you will see that during the intervention, even in the placebo, it gets better. Well, we see that in 3 months, both are getting worse. So this is what happens with these markers which are related to nutrition, which are going up and down all the time. So it's not easy at all to measure whether you are responsive or not. So what I want to say is that we need to become better in identifying whether a person or a group of persons is reacting positive of a change of food intake. And that is not that easy. And that is probably also dependent, because this can be, the green one can be and the red one, but perhaps if you go 3 years earlier, the red one behaves like the green one and the green one like the red one. So it's not the same during whole life. And that makes it quite a tricky thing.
So you mean basically it's really hard to measure?
It's very hard to measure. And we need to become better on that. And on certain, like metabolism, diabetes, we are already quite a bit. But on mood, for example, or that sort of things, inflammation, we are not yet there.
Oh, but can we solve that? Can we start measuring ourselves better in the future?
Yeah, that's what we are focusing on.
Ah,
yeah.
Wonderful.
And also trying to focus on how should we do randomized clinical trials in a better way than today. Because nutrition has not the same effect in 12 weeks as a drug has. But we still have to measure it.
But can you even measure it in those randomized ways that we measure?
I think we can. By, for example, measuring fewer people and longer, and take the green one instead of the red one. Because in the red one, the noise is so big that you will never meet never identify the signal.
Okay, so basically I will be someone that you would run the randomized trial on in such case. I become the whole test group.
Yeah.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
That's truly individual.
Yeah,
it is.
Absolutely.
Okay, so wonderful. So what is it that we can do then? Measuring ourselves.
Yeah, and that could be, we call that surrogate biomarkers, and that could be biomarkers which are related to the real health issue. But you can also think of, for example, before cholesterol and cardiovascular health. I mean, you don't die of cholesterol, you die of a cardiovascular problem, but the cholesterol was a sort of a biomarker predicting that. We need more predictive markers of health, for example, of your mood, of concentration, all that sort of things. So there we are working on, and that could be that we are related to gut health, related to metabolic health, and related to mental health. For example, in an MR camera, you can see things in your brain already, which are so small, but you really can detect, which can predict whether you have an effect or not.
This all seems very, very complicated for me as an individual to be able to measure myself. Will it become far easier in the future?
I think, yes, and that's what we want to do. Because that is the next step. Otherwise, we recommend all sorts of food changes without any evidence. Because the evidence is very often based on the group, but not on the individual.
But okay, so tell me, in the future then, how will we measure me? So I understand what I should eat or not, or behave or not, or...
My idea is that we will have sensors, we will have blood measurements, but we will have also tricks. We will challenge someone because, for example, if you want to see whether you have, let's put it in another way. If I want to make someone more stress resilient, then it is better to put one in a stress situation and then measure than in a relaxed situation. So we have to stress our body, and then we easier can identify how the body reacts and whether we can affect that one. Like you can put the body in stress. You can all sort of things. Like eating is a stress for your metabolism.
Yep.
You can much easier see things happening after a meal than just fasting.
Okay, so basically you would test me by giving me a lot of cinnamon rolls or candy, and then
Or
you'll
put you
you'll
in a
measure
certain
me, or
if I want to measure immunology, your immunological function, I put you perhaps in a stress situation which triggers your immune system.
okay.
If I want to measure metabolic things, I trigger your system by a metabolic stressor. I can, for cognition, I want perhaps to trigger you with an emotional stressor.
Okay, very good. But if you take a look at what we're trying to do now, there are many projects trying to do a map of the human biome, for instance, and there seems to be so many things that we need to factor in. Can we ever calculate this in a way, or do we have to rather look at the effects of things and induce our knowledge about individuals?
I think we can, but we need to have a holistic view, because that is what has happened now. We look at one thing, and other researchers look at another thing, and we don't combine it. Like, for example, if you take the Cafestol from your coffee, if you are a cardiovascular researcher, you say, you have to take filter coffee, because the filter coffee takes away the Cafestol, and the Cafestol increases your cholesterol. If you are a gastroenterologist and dealing with colon cancer, you say, you have not to take a paper coffee, because the Cafestol actually is protecting you for colon cancer. So perhaps if you are at risk for cardiovascular disease, you should take the paper filter. If you are at risk for colonic cancer, you should take the unfiltered coffee. I mean, you have to take a holistic view, not only from one organ system or the other organ system. We have to take it holistically.
But this is interesting, because it feels to me that I'm being bombarded from left and right by various types of recommendations that I don't know anything about, if they have anything to do with me or not.
Yeah.
How should I be able to navigate this as an individual in the future?
I think the next step will be that we will go focus on groups of people. It's very hard to take it individual in everyone, but we can identify certain groups: adolescents, adolescents who are training, or adolescents who are just not training, people with a certain disorder. We can define smaller groups and then try to identify the healthy effects in the smaller groups, and then go to individuals.
Okay, because what you're saying essentially, that what we're saying in Sweden and a lot of other countries out there, that we have national recommendations for how to eat.
Yeah.
That is basically entirely wrong, right?
Yeah, they are very broad. Yeah,
They're
and they could, like the green and the red one, they could have a different effect. Yeah.
They could,
Yeah.
but if
But that's what we have, and they are based on evidence, so that's good. But of course we want to go more individual.
So give me an example of what is the size, or what is a typical individual group? Is that all patients with pre-diabetes, or is it even more pre-diabetes patients who train and exercise?
I think these groups could be from 1,000 people or 10,000 people to perhaps some hundred. I mean, that is, you want to have a group which you can predict it will react on a food intervention in the same way. And there we need this sort of biomarkers to identify that this is a homogeneous group. Yeah.
Okay. So what do you say? What type of technologies will we use in the future? You mentioned sensors.
I think the combination of breath analysis, sensors on the body, as well as blood markers, fecal markers, urine markers. Yeah.
And what will we achieve?
And I think actually also we're working a lot on brain imaging, and I think that will make it is a deal breaker. Yeah.
So brain imaging, cheaper brain imaging. Okay. So what would you say regarding all these sensors that we'll have in our bodies? Because right now it feels like we are not defining our own eating habits today. It's being defined by food that's around us, or how we've been tricked at the supermarket, etc. When we start to know more about ourselves, will that also affect our food choices?
It will, yes, but before elaborating on that, I would say that there is another challenge, and that is that we are going into a very elitistic thing. because you and I will be perhaps be able to do that, but the people who need it most, they will probably don't do it. So I think as a society, we have the challenge that healthy food will not be an elitistic feature, but everyone is able to choose healthy food and afford the healthy food. I think that would make a bigger change on the societal health as a whole than we only look at you and me.
That is very true. So healthy food is a societal question. Our time is out. Thank you so much, Robert, for coming here and sharing. A big round of applause for Robert. And now you might wonder why I'm here on stage drinking this Good Idea drinks here. There's nothing strange about that at all. Let's call up Elin Östman from Good Idea Drinks and see if she can have a few takes on how to behave a bit better.